Okay, good morning. So today is July 28th, and we have a developer meeting. So Giovanni, you wanted to discuss deprecation of services ahead of other things, right?
Yes, I want to first announce that by end of today, hopefully, or latest tomorrow, Keptn 18 will be released, the latest and greatest version of Keptn. So stay tuned and please try that out. And if you find any issue, just report some bugs. Hopefully zero, but you never know. On a more serious topic instead, we're planning to get rid of Helm and JMeter service from the Keptn core repository and instead move it to the Keptn contrib. The reasoning for this is Helm and JMeter are an integration of Keptn, so it's to provide better included into the Keptn project, but officially they are an integration. They're not part of the orchestration layer. And we want to focus the Keptn core repository to be just focusing on the orchestration layer, and the integrations can be found then in Keptn contrib. So from Keptn 19 onwards, you will not find anymore the release of Helm and JMeter there, but in a different repository and organization. The major change
So you're going to
for
have
the
to rewrite a
users,
lot of the doc.
not really. The only major change for the users is feature set and everything is the same. Just how to install it if you, because we will not publish it anymore, the images over Docker Hub. Instead, it will be over the GitHub repository or registry. So there is no good change or much change on the documentation side, just where they can find the images now.
Okay.
So currently these services are managed by Helm already.
Yep.
So I assume that basically we will update the Helm chart service in new location. So in theory, users shouldn't notice the difference at all.
No, only if they are directly trying to download our images over Docker Hub because they have an air gap setup, then some adaptation might be required. But we are trying to do as much as possible to be zero code change for our customers and our users.
Okay. So that's good, thank you.
Okay, I'm done with that. If there is no questions from the community, then I'm looking forward to see the demo about Datadog SLI provider.
Is your online? Yes.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I wanted to show you the demo for the Datadog SLI provider today. This should take, I think, around 10 to 15 minutes. I hope my screen is visible. Apparently, Webby doesn't allow you to log in with the same account twice. So I'm on two different machines with two different accounts. So you should see two of me in the meeting. A quick overview of Datadog. So Datadog is very similar to Graph and Dynatrace. Actually, it is a competitor to Dynatrace and Logic and Signal Lab. Essentially, have something like dashboards and check out all the charts. And it has slightly different format for the metrics. It uses its own, so it looks something like this. System CPU.user, and you see the value. So the Datadog serves to integrate the live provider for Keptn. I'm directly going to go into the repo and show you how it works. So here's the README. Switching to, and here's the repository with me. So I've my Keptn instance. It is at Keptn 0.15.0. I'm going to support newer versions in the future, but right now 15.0, and We have these many pods installed, the standard setup, except the extra stuff that I've installed is Datadog and Datadog service, which is the actual SLI integration. I have a script called kup.s Datadog service repository where you can go and see what I have installed. I've just run this script. So it just installs zero JMeter service, a bunch of other things comes down. It adds a resource. So I've created a project called Potato Head, a service called Hello Service. I have an example Helm chart that I'm using, which sits in examples quick start, and you can find it in the official repository here as well. I'll promptly show you how it looks in Keptn, but essentially I'm adding the Hello Service Helm chart endpoints, the JMeter configuration for testing. Then I come down, I add Datadog, and then I come down, and then I install the Datadog service. You need a Datadog API key and app key for that. And at the very end, I trigger a delivery. So let's go to Keptn. So I've boot forwarded, my API Nginx pod, and closed. Oops. All right. So this is where my previous experiments, but this is what it looks like. I try to release 0.11 of Hello Service. I'll quickly go over what I'm going to do as part of demo and show you the SLI and SLO as well. So this is the Hello Service is the service I want to deploy, and I'm going to deploy 0.11 or 0.12 version of the service. The SLI sits here. I have added explanation around the SLI. You can go and read it in the official repository. It essentially looks at the response time, the HTTP response time for the Hello service. The Hello service is a community service which sits here. There's one peculiar thing though, where in Datadog you need to add special annotations so that Datadog enables an integration which is called HTTP check, which allows you to capture the response time as a metric in Datadog. This is the only difference. Otherwise, the Hello service is it's taken from our examples from main Keptn repository. So the SLI is HTTP response time. It's average HTTP response time for the duration of the test. And the SLO basically says if the response time is less than 100 milliseconds, this is in seconds, so 0.1 seconds, then it's a pass. If it's from 0.1 to 0.5 seconds, it's a warning, and anything above 0.5 is a failure. And the testing sits here. I'm just using the standard JMeter config thing. Slightly with slight differences, like I've changed the values to a little higher values so that you can see the test run for a minute to see a nice SLI result. Any questions until now? Okay, cool. I will trigger a delivery to show how it looks like. Let me copy the sample. So I'm just going to come here and trigger delivery for. So this triggers delivery for Potato Head, Hello Service, and image version is 0.11. If we come back to Keptn again, should appear here anytime. Okay, maybe I need to refresh the page. Okay, there you go. All right. So I'm trying to deploy 0.11, and It's in testing right now. We can take the logs meanwhile to show what is happening. So where's my Datadog service? Oops. I have enabled the debug logs, so we see way more information than we should be seeing, just to demonstrate what is happening. The SLI event hasn't been triggered yet, so it's just waiting. The test should run for a minute or a minute and a half. Meanwhile, if you have anything to ask, please go ahead. I should have made the test shorter. Sorry.
Okay, that must take some time. So speaking of Datadog, are there any version restrictions for Datadog that you set in your service integration?
Can you say that one more time?
Any version restrictions for Datadog? Or do you just take the latest spec of the service?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So right now I just take the latest version, but I should definitely be pinning down to some version. I recently changed the versioning strategy for Datadog service from like 0 mapping to 0.1. I'm just starting the Keptn's versioning strategy, but I think we definitely need a mapping to say what version of Datadog does Datadog support, and I think that's a good point.
Actually, I
Thank
meant
you,
the version of Datadog API itself. So when you talk to the server, Datadog provides several versions of APIs at the moment, if I recall correctly. So what version do you use?
I think I use the, I believe it's the V2 version, but I can quickly go and check that and get back to you, but I believe it's the latest thing. I think it's the V2 version because is that I think you can quickly go and check. That's a good question. Is that oh, it's V1. Okay, looks like I'm wrong. So it seems to be using the client for 160, but I don't think this this completely answers your question. I can get back to you around what version of.
I was just wondering because Datadog as a new service, its API evolved quite rapidly. I believe there is already V2.1. I'm not sure whether it's available for Go client.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I remember now. So V2 is, I believe it supports extra stuff, and V1 is still supported if I'm not wrong. So the API we are trying to access for metrics is a part of V1, and it gives you like, I believe the metric one is part of V1, and anything extra goes into V2, but then I might be wrong. So I can get back to you on that.
Yeah, I might be wrong. But well, I think that for foreseeable future, it will keep working.
Yep, I think that one, I'm just going to note that down.
And we are ready.
That's one. Okay. Yep, looks like it's a pass. So I'm going to go here and see that the response time was 0.024. Means it is, if I go back again to our, I think you can see it as well. It's less than 0.1, so it's a pass. It's going to show the same thing in Datadog, just to cross-verify. So if we go back to Datadog service logs, you see. So you can see the query was this, replacing everything down to this. So we are looking at this is the query that is sent to Datadog. So average network HTTP response time by hello service, and roll up to the amount of time it took to run the test from Unix epoch this to Unix epoch this. So I can quickly show you what it looks like in Datadog just for cross verification. So if I go to Datadog Matrix Explorer, and I'm going to switch to the query mode, the advanced mode, and say this is my query, and the from into right here. So right now, the from in the Unix epoch seconds is this. I'll go and paste it here, and then do a 2, paste here, and the value we should have is this. So this is 1 second. Why is showing? Okay, it's showing 2 minutes. Okay, all right. So if you see, the value is 24.35 milliseconds. So sometimes Datadog shows this range slightly longer than what we are. So the value we actually want to see is this. So if you look at this is the value we want to see, and you can see it in 0.024 seconds, which is 24.7 milliseconds. It just shows it as milliseconds here, shows it as in seconds here. It satisfies and it's a pass, and then it goes to release. I think that is pretty much it. I would like for the community to try out and give more feedback around. And that sits here. You can just go and run the script in kf.sh. Here's the list of open issues. And I'm still working on it, and I want to support the newer in the future as well.
Not from me. Thanks for the demo.
All right.
Any questions from others? So, what is your release plan for Datadog integration service? As far as I understand the current status, it's more or less ready for adoption. So,
the current status of the service, where is it right now?
Yeah. So basically, how do you perceive it? Is it a prototype, or is it ready for wider adoption?
I think from my end, I think it's in a usable state right now. What I'd really like is alpha users and give me more feedback. It's certainly adds rough edges, and I'd like to hammer them out. But what I'm really looking at this point is for more users to try. I would say it's more in an alpha state, and it is also available on Artifact Hub right now. The Helm chart is not available yet, but the package itself is available on Artifact Hub, so you can go and check it out. I think you can just do. So there you go. So it's available on Artifact Hub, as I say. If you're interested, you can check that out. If there are no more questions, I would like to stop here, and we can go to the next update.
Okay, so I'll spend some time maybe next week or when I'm back from vacation to promote Datadog service. So maybe we could drive in some users.
That would be great.
Yeah. So I'll also cut this part of the video so that we can share it publicly if you're fine with it.
Of course.
And yeah, I think that it should at least facilitate some feedback.
Yep. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And yep, that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Mm-hmm. So the next item, we continue with demos, right? And the next, so the next force is presentation by flow, right? New sequence execution. And
yeah, I believe I'm next.
mm-hmm.
All right. You should see my browser now with the meeting notes open. So today I want to show you a new endpoint that has been introduced in, or will be introduced in Keptn 0.18, which is the new sequence execution API endpoint. So why has this been introduced? So up until now, if you have a project where you trigger a lot of sequences and maybe for some reason one of the sequences didn't get finished properly, maybe due to a execution plane service not finishing its task properly, and that sequence will hang, and then it will block new sequences from being executed. And up until now, it has been not exactly easy to actually find the stalling sequence, which is causing other sequences to not be able to be executed. So actually, you needed to look directly into the MongoDB database to really identify the blocking sequence. And now we have added this endpoint for the so-called sequence executions, which gives you basically REST API for retrieving entries from the collection that the Shipyard controller actually internally uses to orchestrate sequences. And where pretty much all the information that Shippy needs to orchestrate them is in there, and this will also hopefully help you as a user to better identify what's going on in your sequence. And yeah, so we have a mandatory project parameter, query parameter. You can see the documentation of the endpoint in the Swagger doc of the control plane component of our API. And in addition to the project, you can filter on the stage, the service, then maybe the name of the sequence, and what's really important, the status of the sequence. So basically, let's imagine the scenario where we want to identify a blocking sequence, or actually a sequence that's currently in execution. So for that, we can go to this API and set the project parameter, and to find the currently active sequence, we set the status filter to started. And if you reload that, we have now an empty list because no sequence is running. So let's change that and trigger a delivery sequence. So now that has been started. So we are currently deploying our beloved sock shop. And now we see that this endpoint actually returns something. Let me open that in a formatted JSON format. And yeah, so if you want to see, for example, the Keptn context of that sequence, you will find that here in the scope property. So here you will see the Keptn context, and using this ID, you can, for example, navigate to the to this sequence within the bridge by using the ID within the deep link, or you could, for example, directly use that ID to actually cancel the sequence within the sequence control API. So in that case, you could send a request for, again, the project, then paste the sequence in there and send the cancel command. And if that was such a stalling sequence that was preventing other sequences from being executed, this would then free up the queue for new sequences to be executed eventually. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for now. Are there any questions about this new endpoint?
Yes, why is the project name a query parameter and not a path parameter? Because it is required. Why it isn't a path parameter instead?
Yeah, we actually had a discussion on that. So initially it was a path parameter, but since from a semantic point of view, it is actually a filter, we opted to go with a query parameter in that case.
Okay.
Even though it is mandatory.
And another thing, so in this endpoint, only the running sequences are in there, right? So the running ones that is being executed. Not the one...
No, you can filter for all sequences as well. Just in this particular example, I've set the status to started because that's usually the way to identify a blocking sequence. But if you just set the project, then you will get a huge list of basically all sequences that have been executed. And the available states should be documented here as well. Yeah, so those can be triggered, finished, started, paused, or timed out.
Okay, yeah, I was just a bit confused because at the beginning it was empty, so I thought there are only running ones in there. Okay, yeah, then this is clear now.
All right, any other questions? If not, I'll hand over to Moritz.
Yes, thank you. You should see my screen now. Okay, I'm quickly going to show what I did this sprint. So first of all, I mostly worked on POCs actually, and I managed to finish the POC for Keptn images in the ARM architecture. And if we take a quick look, basically what I adjusted was all of our Docker files to be able to basically cross-compile them from x86 to ARM. And there, like, the most important thing is basically that we set Go OS and Go Arch to Linux and then ARM64, and then basically Go will compile an ARM compatible Go binary for you. And basically I did that for all our Docker files with some caveats that, for example, you cannot, or at least for us, it didn't work to use this link mode external mode, which basically tells Go to dynamically link our binaries and not statically link them. But yeah, so that there is some caveats, but basically I managed to get a full set of ARM compatible images from Keptn. And it's even built directly in the pipeline using Docker buildx and the Qimo emulator. And then you basically define in your Docker build push action, which builds our images, you define the platforms, and there we have now, in addition to AMD64, also ARM64. This is still all in a draft mode pull request. It's not merged yet, and it's not going to be released with 0.18 for now. But maybe we're going to release those images in the future. I did actually manage to run this on an ARM Kubernetes cluster with ARM nodes inside, basically. And there again, we have a caveat because we're using Bitnami's MongoDB, which doesn't actually support ARM. So the only way to run Keptn on ARM would be with an externally hosted MongoDB, which we do actually support. So you would adjust your Helm values accordingly, basically, and then you get a full set of working Keptn on ARM. I did actually also document all my findings in here directly in the pull request. If you want to check that out, there's also some nice references on how to do what I did there, basically. And luckily, the integration tests are still green, so that's all good. Even though those run on x86, of course, for now still. That's the first thing. Any questions about that?
So for demo purposes, you use only services which are part of Keptn core, right?
Yes, it's only Keptn core for now.
And ideally, we would need to update other services to run them. But yeah.
Exactly, yeah. You could basically follow the same procedure that I took here to get ARM images out of your whatever integration you want to support.
Yeah. On which container runtime did you test it, by the way?
Sorry?
Because, on which container runtime did you test it? Because last time I tried with images, there were some issues with Creo, for example. So I just wonder where you were testing it.
This was, so I tested it on a cluster on GCP, which uses containerd in the background. And I did also ask a friend who has an M1 MacBook with K3s directly installed on the machine, and that also worked.
Which is cool.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
So,
unfortunately, I can't show that right now because I destroyed the cluster again. ARM nodes are expensive.
Definitely. But yeah, it's actually nice. And moreover, we should have no problem with having hybrid Keptn instances. So let's say orchestration plane on ARM, execution plane on x86, on whatever customers have, because it should be quite transparent on the Kubernetes level.
Exactly, yeah. So you would have, for example, a hybrid cluster with x86 and also ARM nodes, and a Keptn could run on ARM, for example, and all your deployed things would run on x86 too.
Yeah,
that's definitely possible. Yeah.
Just to make sure that JMeter service is out of the scope. So you haven't tested it.
Yes.
Right? Because,
I left out JMeter service. Yeah, exactly. I left out JMeter, but I did include the Helm service for now. So Helm got the same. Helm service got the same treatment. JMeter, yeah. I just did some minor adjustments, basically some refactoring, but I didn't manage to actually get it running on ARM.
Generally, it would be nice to land it, even if it's POC.
Yeah, so there's still some things that need to be done. For example, adjust all our testing to also have all those ARM images properly tested before we release anything. That's something I didn't do yet. For example, our integration tests are still all running on x86.
No. If we release it as preview, probably we can leave without test coverage, but yeah, it's not that great. Yeah, what is important that the x86 is covered.
Exactly.
Thanks. It's a nice prototype.
Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, then I'm gonna go to my next POC. I did a POC to introduce Sneak. It's a security tool. I already showed last developer meeting that I introduced a pipeline with some security scans. It's down here somewhere. For now, it's still red. We need to still work out some stuff, but yeah. And I wanted to introduce another tool there, basically, to have more broader coverage of testing. And I did introduce Sneak here. This is just an issue to document my research findings, basically. And the pull request you can find here. So in the end, this is basically yet another tool added to the security scans pipeline, which will give us more results, which we can work with. I also managed to integrate it together with the GitHub CodeQL and code scanning tools that are already provided by them. So we should see security results directly in the dashboard inside our GitHub repo, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so it's yet another tool basically in our arsenal. And then one more thing, actually resulting from this, I already worked on some security improvements, this time for nuts in our Helm chart. And I basically added some best practice security settings here. So we run as non-root now with different user ID. I added some resource limits and requests. Those basically come from integration test monitoring, and I added some generous amount of resources on top so that this should be fine. We could maybe fine tune this in the future. Yeah, and then I also added like common security settings. Run as run, non-root, no privask, read on the root file system, drop door capabilities, stuff like that. I also disabled this exporter. This is the, what's it called? Nuts Prometheus exporter. We're not using it actively in Keptn Core. So per default, this is disabled now, but you can re-enable it anytime just by setting the ham value, basically. Yeah, and this is just some of our testing ham values. Any questions about this stuff? Cool. Actually, one more thing. I still have it open here. This is still for the ARM images. You will see that for my pull request images that I have right now on Docker Hub, those are actually now built on AMD 64 and ARM 64, just to show it off here on Docker Hub. But that's it. So I am gonna hand over to Bernd.
Thank you. So, I'm gonna show you three little things. The first thing is has to do with the CLI. As you know, the recent version of Keptn actually requires you to set up a Git upstream, and you can create project using the CLI. And then when you did not pass the information for a Git repository, it actually said to you that actually this will not be possible in the future anymore. So you got a warning actually, and with this ticket we try to remove that warning. So with the most recent version of Keptn, then actually you need to pass that information to the Keptn create project using the Keptn CLI. Here just showed how this looks like when you're using the CLI Keptn create project. It just gives you the error that you must give a remote URL to a Git repository. If you give it, there are other sanity checks. For example, you also need to most probably provide a access token or a private key, depending on the method you're using, and so on and so forth. This all works in a way that when you execute the Keptn create project command, the CLI will first check using the metadata endpoint of Keptn whether Keptn was installed with the auto provisioning feature, so the feature that is actually in the background provisioning the Git repository for you automatically, whether this feature is enabled or not, and depending on that, it will give you a warning or not. So if it is enabled, then it's still, of course, possible to just use a Keptn create project blah blah command, because in the back, Keptn will take care of setting up the required Git repository. Basically, was a small issue, but I took care that this functionality is actually well tested. It was not really testable at the first place, as so many places of the CLI, unfortunately. So I just refactored a little bit and basically moved out the functionality into an own component, which is living in the internal project creator package. It's called Project Creator, and this one is very well tested and should cover all all cases that could appear in this context. Good.
Bernd, a question for you. The problem we continue to see is that people initialize that GitHub repo, and you go to the GitHub page and it makes you feel really guilty if you don't initialize it and put a README in, and people are succumbing. They get errors, but they're bizarre errors. They're showing up on the help channel, what happened, and somebody says, did you initialize that thing? You can't do that. Is there any possibility of having an explicit warning that comes out that says this repo has been initialized and you can't do that or something?
Depends a little bit what we get back from the Keptn API, but I think that would be doable, yes, and I think that would be also very valuable, yeah. Because right now it just says, what does the CLI say actually? Could not create project period or something like that, right?
Yeah, something that's not helpful.
Yeah, we could look into that. I don't see anything which should block us from doing that. That's really good input. Yeah. Any further questions about that? If no, I will just go to the next issue, which is just a short issue. Christian actually saw that now we have an experimental Go SDK in place, which can be used for creating simple Keptn integrations, and he just mentioned that actually some parts of this implementation of the Go SDK could be enhanced with respect to test coverage, and I've just grabbed that issue and increased the coverage of the Go SDK. We didn't saw that immediately because Go SDK is kind of experimental. It's always changing, and it's also not advertised to be stable and so on. And we didn't have code coverage reported for the whole Go utils repository. So 2 changes I did here. Of course, I've made some refactorings and so on and so forth to increase the parts of the Go SDK that are really not well covered by unit tests. And I've also included CodeCov for the Go utils project, which is now also merged, and we have here when we look at codecov.io also Go utils in there, and see, for example, that SDK currently has a coverage of 73%. We also have very low coverage for other parts, but that has other reasons. For example, we have a lot of model structs in there which are not really tested, but lots of lines of code and so on. But basically, we have now a coverage thing here. You also see here the CP connector, for example, is currently at 80% and so on. So now we have a way to track this and improve on that for this repository as well. If there's no question, I go to the next ticket. added, what's that? Added retry logic to CP connector. So CP connector, the library you can use to create Keptn integrations without the distributor, just in plain Go using that library. This was lacking some kind of retry logic when contacting the Keptn control plane for doing its renewal of its registration status. And I've just took that, and if you take a look here, for example, what do we have here? Yeah, all of a sudden the control plane was not reachable anymore. The library could not ping that component. It would retry a couple of times and give you then a warning that it reached the maximum number of attempts to ping the control plane. And then it will basically, yeah, start the shutdown sequence. And as you can see, it's also gracefully shut down all the components which are running in the background, and in the end, stopping the subscription source, stopping event source, and then exiting. So that should be also covered now. And if there's no question, I'm not sure if I or another person already showed the new README of the Go utils repository. If no, I will just briefly go over it if there's still some time. Is there interest in, or should we skip it and go on? Depends a little bit on the time.
Documentation is always interesting.
Since we have only 30 minutes for the rest of the people, I would say, everyone, please have a look at the README. Now we have good documentation for that.
Good. Then I'm stopping here. Just take a look. We have a nice little picture here, and it should be now updated. And yeah, and it also has references to CP connector and Go SDK, and you can get information from there. Thanks. Handing over to whoever is next. I don't know actually.
It's me. Yeah. This was the wrong button. Okay. So yeah, bridge side, we have some performance improvements because we had the project polling in the bridge for pretty much every page. So if we are on the project selection or the project board, then the project polling happened in the environment screen, in the service screen, etc. So for all screens. This has now been moved to the environment screen. Previously it was global because there were some dependencies in other screens, and yeah, they're now eliminated, and project polling only happens now in the environment screen. So before, all the data that is shown here was also fetched for other screens, but that wasn't necessary. Yeah, so this is improvement in less API calls. Then the next issue, yeah, there was a bug for the evaluations. So yeah, there was some wrapping because we incorrectly used a barista component for the evaluation batch. And yeah, now we wrote our own component, and now there is no wrapping anymore, or something that show more is displayed instead of the whole evaluation bar. Yeah, and this is now also fixed. Yeah, and that's pretty much from my side. So any questions? If not, then I'm handing over to Ermin.
Thank you very much. From my side, also just some small improvements on the bridge side. We did some refactoring in the project settings, Rxifying it, and yeah, basically nothing changed there in the UI. It's just about maintainability of the code. So yeah, basically that the state in the page is yeah, in one object, some loading indicators were combined there, and yeah, just to make the code more maintainable. And two bug fixes from my side. One was in the evaluation board. If in the configuration change in the payload, the image was missing, then the evaluation board was not rendering at all. So this is fixed now. Yeah, I don't have a screenshot here, but yeah, this was just because we accessed this property and we had yeah, no null check there for that one. And another bug fix that is in the pipeline, so not yet merged, but will be in the release that's upcoming, is the detection of pending changes when automatic provisioning is activated. This was found by Christian. Yeah, when you visit the project settings page and you have automatic provisioning enabled, then previously it would just show these two buttons, HTTPS and SSH. And when you try to move to another page, although you did not change any settings there, it would ask you if you want to discard your changes and leave the page, or so it is the change detector hits there. And yeah, you don't see the configured upstream. So this is now fixed. If there is an upstream configured, although you have automatic provisioning, it would just show this configured upstream. And yeah, when you create the project, it will allow you to select no upstream, but in the configuration, in this when the project exists, it will just show the existing configuration. Yeah. If there are no questions, that's all from my side, and I'm handing over to Andre.
Thanks. I'll share my screen. So hopefully you're seeing my screen. So I'll briefly go through pull requests I made in the last 2 weeks. I'll start with 2 features. The first one is introducing a new remote URL deny list into the Shipyard controller. Basically, now the admin can actually deny some remote URLs which are used as a URL to create a project, the Git URLs. So for example, if the admin wants to forbidden a certain URL for creating a project, for example, GitHub or Bitbucket, he just needs to create a values YAML file and apply it via -- values option during the install or upgrade. And in this case, it works like that, when the project is created or updated, this deny list is checked, and if the updated URL matches via the regex some of the deny list, some of the items in the deny list, where each line is treated as one regex, it forbids creating or updating the project, and the user needs to use another URL. I'll jump to the second one, which is introducing a new webhook config migrator. As you all know, we recently introduced a new webhook config version, which is the V1 Beta 1 version. Now we introduce a migrator, which will migrate all the webhook configurations from V1 Alpha 1 version to V1 Beta 1 version. We created it as a separate new CLI command, which will basically work like Keptn migrate webhooks, where all the projects are retrieved, and for each project, the webhooks are retrieved and basically migrated to the, if they are in the beta version, there's no changes. If they are in the alpha version, they migrated to the beta version and updated in the Git repository. We also provide 2 options like dry run, which makes actually the same what the command, but it does not update the webhook configuration in the Git repository just prints out, so the user can check if the migrated webhook configuration is looking as it should be, and also a project option where the user can specify a project name for which can he migrate, for which he wants to migrate webhook configuration. So in this case, only the webhook configurations for the specific projects are migrated. Then we had two bugs. We had a small bug in the Shipyard controller where when retrieving a separate project and when retrieving a non-existing project, the user got a 500 error. This was caused due to the not ideal normalization of the error messages, as the database was responding with different error messages as the handler was expecting it. So the solution was actually normalize the error messages to put it in one place, not have duplicates, and the database and also the handlers are now using only one single source of truth of error messages, and now everything works as expected. The second bug was regarding retrieving in the resource service when retrieving a single resource. This endpoints basically didn't work when a user tried to retrieve a resource which contained slashes in its resource URI. So we needed to do just escape these slashes, so it's able to read. Otherwise, the user always got a 404, so resource not found. And some chore works from my side about improving the NATS configuration, also bumping the NATS release from 0.13.2 to 0.70.2, and also adding some additional parameters, setting, unsetting some things, just a chore work. And regarding this, also we baked the Helm dependencies directly to the repository charts. So until now it worked like the dependencies were during each installation downloaded and applied. Now they're part of the charts, so they do not need to be downloaded, only used. Are there any questions? Silence means no. So thank you. Stop sharing, and the next one is Meg.
And Meg will defer. We've got to get to GSOC presentations. I have nothing big. There's a note to you to warn you if you're looking for doc, it may be moved. And my question I'll post in the Slack channel.
Yeah. So speaking of GSOC presentations, it's time for us to close down because Bev supports only one meeting in parallel. So yeah, I guess we haven't finished the full agenda today.
Very close.
So yeah, so if you want, we can schedule another short sync up to the next week to get through the rest.
Yeah, I'm good. If I'm the only one, we don't need to do that.
Okay, then okay. Thanks everyone. And
thanks everyone. Great session.
Thank you everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. See you.
Bye.
Bye.